well, this is going to be interesting. I haven't given a talk in a very long time, and I used to talk a lot publicly because I was teaching programming at boot camps and things like that. But I've never actually given a conference talk. This is a very small conference. Hopefully we'll have fun. I've been working on slides up to right now, so this is actually the first complete run through, and I hope you enjoy it. This is called Lonely in Tech, and it's an engineer story. Wait, that's not quite right. This is Lonely in Tech, and it's really kind of a teacher story. Well, I don't know if that's quite right. This is Lonely in Tech, and it's no. See, that's not right either. I think this is Lonely in Tech, which is a programmer story. So I started writing this talk, and it was originally going to be titled "Communal Computing and Inside-Out Software" because there have been a lot of things that have challenged me lately as I've tried to figure out how I want to use computers to participate in the world, not just how I want to use computers to pay my rent or whatever the fuck. But increasingly, as I was writing the talk, I realized that what I wanted to talk about and what I had to think about, what I was grappling with, was not how to use computers, but why I enjoyed them to begin with. I think we spend a lot of time getting into computers because we enjoy it, and the software industry makes that about ways to make a number line on a chart go up somewhere, and we forget what was exciting about it from the start. So I had to kind of work on what makes me me as I worked on this talk. And I wanted to figure out a narrative around that because my story is important. It's important to me, right? I think that's probably true for all of us. And I wanted to talk about how I got here. I don't really feel like a townie in a lot of ways, and I don't mean that in a negative context. I mean I've been absent. I've known Nate forever. I joined town pretty early. I don't know the incept date on my account, but it's been there a while. But I've not done a lot in chat. I don't have a lot posted on the town. I haven't explored greatly. And so in some ways I feel like an outsider to town culture just because I haven't been participating, not because it hasn't been open or accessible to me. So I wanted to talk a little bit about myself because a lot of you don't know me. The flip side is that may make this talk seem really self-indulgent and off the walls, and that's fine. And I actually got quite emotional writing the talk, which was really nice. So I've been very heads down on that this morning, but now I'm here. So hi, I'm Britt, and a couple things about me you might want to know. I have a partner of 10 years who's in Atlanta, Norma. I love her dearly. We got married. This was in a treehouse in 2019, a bamboo treehouse. Only our parents were there. We had a separate wedding reception that Nate was at. That was only friends, no family. Several months later, right before COVID hit. It was very lucky timing. She's amazing. She works in a nonprofit. She tries to make sure people have the mental health services they need and have the housing they need and have, she's amazing. We have dogs, and I love our dogs so much. I'm blissed out when I'm playing with our dogs, and the first year of us dating was just the dog. It was just time with the dogs and eating tacos. That was the whole first year, and it was awesome. This is probably a 10-year-old photo. Both of these dogs died in the last 12 months, which sucked. This is Jürgen. He in particular was just my little man. I spent a lot of time playing with him. He was very dysfunctional, and I related to that. I loved how he was just a hot mess, and I was like, yes, keep doing that. That's great. So yeah, that was Jürgen. He hated everyone that wasn't us, which was not hated. He was very fearful of most people, but he loved paying attention to us. And he died 2 months ago today. That's us 10 years ago on the beach, just making him dance. We did thankfully adopt a new dog, Mila. We adopted her in June, May, end of May. Norma just knew she was ready. She's technically she's a Bouvier, Belgian sheepdog, but she's just a big Muppet. We just call her Muppet or Puppet. I love skateboarding. I used to do it a lot more. I haven't done it actually in a few years, but I still have a lot of fondness for it. I still find myself watching old skate videos from the early aughts. It's interesting. I think skateboarding was the first thing that I loved, even though I wasn't good at it. Growing up, I always wanted to be good at things really quickly. And with skateboarding, I really just didn't care. I just wanted to be doing it. I love this book, Unattainable Earth, and I normally keep it in my laptop bag, so I was sort of surprised that I took it out after a recent trip to Santa Barbara. It's by this Polish poet. He died 15 years ago or something. He immigrated after World War II to the U.S. He was not very happy living under Stalin and then Hitler, you might imagine. And a thing about me is that there's always a Miloj quote wherever I am. Like whatever, you can find me any day of any of the last 20 years since I discovered this, there's always a Miloj quote that I'm thinking about. Lately, it's been at least for the last 24 hours, has been to wait for faith in order to be able to pray is to put the cart before the horse. Our way leads from the physical to the spiritual. I'm not actually a religious person, not even a little bit, but I really like the intuition that sometimes you just have to do something and then you will feel it. You can't wait to feel it and then do the thing. And I think this captures that really beautifully. There's one other that was coming up for me a lot as I wrote the talk, which was I learned early that language does not adhere to what we really are, and every one of my efforts to say something real ended the same way, by my being driven back to the enclosure of form, as if I were a sheep straying from the flock. I think Miloj talks a lot about like trying to express himself honestly, and it looks like he was a Nobel Prize-winning writer, and still found language very constricting, right, to say something real. I really like electronic music. I like a lot of weird electronic music. There are 3 records here. This is a random photo I found, but it seemed like a good one. Probably relevant to Nate somewhat. This is Tim Hecker's Rave Death, 1972, I think. Mono Lakes Hong Kong, which is like a dub techno thing, and Finej's Venice, which is a beautiful like ambient noise wash, insane thing. It's great. Oh shit! Okay, I'm sorry, everybody. I'm so sorry. I messed up. I need to try this one more time. Hi, I'm kingcons. I'm on Tilda Town under kingcons. A lot of people know me by that name. Here are some things about me. I really love Common Lisp. I don't know how this happened. I've become known for this, and a lot of people associate me with Common Lisp to some degree. I don't have an excuse for this. I don't think it's the best language. I don't think everyone should use Common Lisp. It works for me. I really like it. I think it's been malleable as the way I've wanted to program has changed over time, which I like a lot. Like it's allowed my style to shift in, I think, sort of dramatic ways. It also has one advantage that I think very few languages have these days, which is that I can write code, and 10 years later, the same fucking code does the same fucking thing. I don't worry about compiler version changes. I don't worry about libraries falling over. I write the code, and it does the thing, and that is really nice. So big fan. I like this idea of readable programs. I don't like to say literate. I don't know if people have encountered it, but like Donald Knuth had this whole thing around literate programs, where like you write prose and you intersperse text code into the prose, and then you run that through some sort of thing that tangles all the code together, and you have a program. I think that the idea of readable programs and the idea of like self-documenting code is kind of bullshit, because from my perspective, if you want to talk about readability, first of all, you have to consider your audience. And you have to know that your audience is not coming in with the same context that you do. So if you don't define some sort of starting context for what your audience has to know to even read the document, then you're just talking out of your ass about readability to start with. But the other thing is, programs, aside from very simple programs, have complex execution paths that we don't even have great ways to visualize, really. And so to talk about a narrative, you have to think about a path from start to end. And most programs, I don't think, actually have that. So I really like trying to make programs that I feel like you can go through in some order and get a sense of the thing. I think this is really hard, though. I think we haven't figured out as a discipline how to do this or what that would mean. So I'm really interested in that. Notably, maybe 10 years ago, I made CL6502, which is one of my kind of early experiments. It was a CPU emulator for the CPU that was in the original Nintendo, the NES, written in Common Lisp, with a bunch of markdown docs that went with every source file that could kind of get like blobbed together into a PDF of docs and then code that walked you through the whole thing. I put it up on Lulu sort of as a gag, like as a self-published, like, hey, if you want to order a copy of the book, feel free. But then some people actually did. I was like, oh, this is weird. I don't know how I feel anymore. This was too pretentious, but it was fun. And yeah, I like making Nintendo emulators. It started off just being a CPU, but then later I tried to make it, an emulator. And I got to the point that I could run some basic games, but that's hard. And I don't know. Every now and then, though, I like writing one, kind of as an exercise. I've also had some fun making static site generators, which Nate tells me people here have feelings about, which is great. I made one a long time ago called coleslaw, which is actually kind of funny because that's like sort of how I met, not how I met Nate, but there was, when Nate and I were working together at my first job out of college, there was some cool folks that hung out in a IRC channel called Plug, which was Cox Linux users group. And Cox was the place we worked. And we somehow, he and Datagrok and I all had a bet. We were like all using WordPress to blog and kind of disgusted with ourselves because it was 2011 and that just wasn't cool anymore. We're like, what are we doing? And so we had a bet to like schedule a 3-person tech talk where we would each present our new blog running on our new homemade blog software in like a week. And we all went home for the weekend and just like hacked, and then came in and had all written like insane things. I think Datagrok used M4 to generate this blog, and mine was Common Lisp, and Nate had done some like local storage-based browser thing. And this is when local storage was like kind of newfangled, and you know, so it was really silly, but we had a really good time. So coleslaw. I made a huge mistake though. I made it open source. I posted it to the Lisp Reddit. I got a friend of mine to do the logo, and I wrote documentation. And before I knew it, I was getting people like opening issues and saying like, can you make it do this? And hey, I noticed you put in a sort of something like a plugin system. Have you thought about? And it was like, oh no. So I worked on that for a few years, and then I like abandoned it. And eventually, some people said, can we adopt this and like maintain it? And I said, yes, please take this from me. Take this chalice. But now I'm working on another one. I'm working on a static site generator called Collards, which is maybe sort of what this talk was originally going to be about. Who knows? More on that later. So that seems like plenty about me. Maybe let's talk about how I got here. So I talked about this. I worked with Nate for a while, and then I taught for a number of years at the Iron Yard, and then bounced around to program a little, and then taught somewhere else at a place called the Flatiron School, and then I became an engineering manager. And no, I'm sorry, y'all. I'm so sorry. Did I mess this up again? I'm really, really sorry. I'm really sorry. Let me try one more time. 2005. I'm at liberal arts school. I'm at a place called Oglethorpe University.
Oh yeah, it's in Brookhaven.
In Atlanta and Brookhaven, which is where I'm from. Yeah, and
I'm from California.
Oh, cool. What are the odds?
Yeah.
Polymeter. What are the odds? So I'm at Oglethorpe. I'm studying economics and literature. They don't have a comp sci major. They have a minor, and it's like Pascal. Like it's not exactly up to date. And so I'm there. I'm spending all my time messing with Linux, and I get so interested that I'm like reading developer blogs, and I get this book by a political economist at UC Berkeley called Stephen Weber, because I really wanted to understand how some people could make a thing that was more pleasant for me to use than Windows and give it away. Like I was confused. For me, day to day, that was a superior experience, and I wasn't really understanding how that was happening. And I grabbed a quote from this that's a little bit funny, but it's interesting. So Stephen Weber said, "Let me go out on a limb and suggest that those who see hints of a new class ideology developing around IT are not necessarily wild-eyed." He then went on to say, this is amazing, "Bit twiddlers are neither exactly proletariat nor bourgeoisie. They may not own the means of production in the sense that Marx argued, but they certainly do have significant control over those means in a more profound way than the term symbols analysts or knowledge workers captures. As a rough generalization, they value science and technological problem-solving elegance equally, at least, with profit." Which is like, okay. I think the thing I liked about this at the time was that I was probably like pretty scared of growing up and getting a job, quite frankly. And so the notion that you could get really interested in open source, start contributing, and then have that somehow develop into an economic activity that you could orient your life around seemed really interesting. And I think some part of me thought a more humane way of participating in life was coming. I did not understand things very well. I was in college, but a lot of my early attraction to the open availability of source code, I think, was about that, like this individual empowerment in some way. Anyway, then we found out in 2000. So I started moving towards getting into computer science properly. I transferred schools, and then we found out my dad had stage 4 lung cancer, and so I was 22. I took a year off school kind of to work in IT and tried to self-teach programming nights at the same time. I was reading structure and interpretation of computer programs, of course, as one does. And came across another book. I only got 100 pages in, but you know what? For working nights, when without much background necessarily,
That's
I thought that was decent.
It's not C list, it's C.
Yeah, it's true. It is scheme. I didn't make it to Common Lisp until a year or two later. But a quote that has always stayed with me from that book was, "Thus, programs should be written for people to read and only incidentally for machines to execute," which is a really challenging thing to believe. So then in 2011 I did graduate and I went to work for a silly media company and I hacked some Python and Django, and they had these things called tea time where we would all go in a room on Friday and there were people would give talks during tea time, and a lot of times it was like, here's a new Django pattern I learned, we should do this for content management or whatever, but sometimes there were other talks. Sometimes they were very, very good talks. So there was a talk given by someone you might know named Bill Nivum that I just called the sci-fi talk, and I have the PDF. I'm happy to provide it to whomever. But he basically got on stage and did a rant about sci-fi. And I remember one of the things that I really loved about Nate was that I think he was one of the first people that I saw his programming had his politics in it in some sense. I think that was something I wanted for myself, but wasn't sure how to do. But there was a very real way in which Nate kind of showed up and said, like, there's a reason we're doing this, and there's a way to do it, and it's more than just writing code for fun. And so one of the slides from that talk that I liked a lot, where he was kind of analogizing our modern world to like sci-fi novels from when we were kids, it's gotten a lot more like those sci-fi novels. And he said, look, startups are boring, make something beautiful, stop taking the web for granted, the web is our world. And I also really like that sense of like personal ownership. Right? And responsibility to do something with it. Thought was really good. Predictably, that great place didn't work out, but I mean, it was a fucking media company. Like, I don't know, I don't have the highest expectations for big media companies. I don't know that you should either, in fairness. But it was pretty great. Like, really, that was a special place. This is actually a photo from my wedding reception. You can see Nate there. You can see Big Jeff's hiding in the background. You can see Data Grok to my left.
Faux Forsexa.
Faux Forsexa, thank you.
Is who that is.
That is his handle now. And getting to work with those folks was really great. And there was a sense of like being seen there that I've not experienced at many other workplaces in the engineering culture. So that was really, really cool. But I did move on from that. There were some really other cool things that I did. I taught. I had always wanted to teach, and I went and worked with a bunch of really cool people at the Iron Yard for 2.5 years and taught a couple hundred folks to code, maybe 120, 130 folks. And then a few years later, I did the same thing at the Flatiron School and taught maybe 200 people, 150, 200 people to code for a year. And that's really, really cool, and I think gets to the way in which I want to make computation accessible. I don't want to make computers accessible. I want people to be able to make the computers do what they want. Because right now, you have to use a computer to participate in life, but getting the computer to do what you want is something that most people don't even really consider. They have to become specialists to do it, and so trying to figure out how to make that more accessible has always been interesting to me. If you want to teach, if you're inclined to try it, I think you definitely should. I think it's really cool. Anyway, but now I've been working from home for like a long time, and it fucking sucks. And it started with COVID, but it's generally not great. In my opinion, I mean, my home is great, seeing Norma and the dogs all the time, that's pretty great. But I do miss having that sense of like shared community and values, right? Shared values with other technical people that are curious about how to make technology impact the world in a better way than what it's done. And that's been really hard. Okay, fine. How did I get here? This is how I got here, I think the point of computers started changing from this. And I don't know when or how that happened. It wasn't what I planned on. Kind of like this talk isn't really the talk I planned on giving. The questions have started becoming more about how I can find community or how I can build community or in what I believe about how we should use computers and what I want from my computer. So I thought a lot about that, and I started working on another site generator again 3 months ago, around the time we adopted Milo. And I was between jobs for a few weeks because I left Calendly because it was fucking tire fire, like every tech company eventually becomes, no matter how noble-minded. And so I started working on another one. And I kind of thought about going to grad school for a while, but then there's something about that, you know, as appealing as that is, and seems like it'd be a great built-in way to like find community, kind of. The things they care about do not match up with the things I care about. The funding and the things that they study are type theory and proving programs correct and making them scale higher and faster. And I don't think those are problems I have with computers. I mean, sure, I get bit by a bug once in a while, but when I think about my real complaints about computing in the world today, those just really aren't even on the list for me. So I've had to start thinking pretty hard about what it is that I believe in. And I came back to this sort of stuff. I came back to Sussman and SICP. I came back to Dan Ingalls, who wrote the design principles behind Smalltalk and said, if a system is to serve the creative spirit, it must be entirely comprehensible to a single individual, right? A single person. I think about Tony Garnock-Jones, who was a grad student at Northeastern, I think, and got his PhD some years ago now, but I followed him. I don't know, I follow a lot of nerds on the internet. It's great, I recommend that. If people are into the weird shit you're into, you know, follow them. And he said, reading things teaches people how to write. Analogous, if we're to place programming at the same fundamental level, using a program should teach how it works. We don't see this. And that really resonates for me. I think that's the sort of thing I would like to see in the world. And at some point I wrote a blog post called Research Goals, where I talked about making an emulator so that I could work backwards to understand how Mega Man 2 worked, because as a kid I loved Mega Man 2 on the Nintendo. I never really figured out how it worked. And I feel like if you can run a system and make observations about that system while it runs using another program, shouldn't you be able to learn something about how it was constructed? Yeah, we have debuggers and things like that, but I don't think we've explored tooling in that area nearly as much as I wish we had. We're not interested in being able to open programs up and understand the abstractions that they're kind of building off of. Also, this one doesn't look like a quote, but it's just a dumb thing I tweeted a few weeks ago on Mastodon, but it sort of stuck with me. Like, I'm not mad about it. It feels right, which is all software is an exercise in power dynamics. I mean, it just all is. It's all just pushing. So I've been toying with a name that kind of wraps this stuff up for me, but I can't yet build anything that remotely embodies like the thing in my head that I think should exist. I just can't get close, but I've been kind of calling it, mostly to myself, I've been calling it inside-out software, because I want it to be just like, you kind of see all the inner workings and it's not really hard to figure out how the pieces fit together. And I think there are a lot of people that are doing awesome work. I don't mean to, I like kind of disparaged the entire academic community a few minutes ago, and I don't want to be paint with too broad a brush. But like, there are a lot of cool things there. One thing I saw recently that I don't think is remotely academic, but I'll show to give a sense of what I mean is, I don't know if anyone's familiar with the Translucent website. I fucking love this thing. This is so good. Okay, so this is Translucent website. I don't remember how I found this. I think someone posted about it on Tiny Total website or Mastodon. So it shows the weather, but if I two-finger scroll with the mouse here, I can explode the program and see that underneath that styled HTML, there's some unstyled HTML. And if I scroll a little bit further, I can see that underneath that rendered representation of the unstyled HTML, there's actual unstyled, like there's actual HTML, right? And then if I explode it a little bit further, I can see that there's a series of network requests that were made to fetch the resources that generate the page that has the HTML. And if I scroll a little bit further, I can see an actual individual request with headers and a response body of JSON and that sort of thing from an API. And then if I scroll further still, sooner or later it just goes, yeah, there's a database table somewhere. And that's the internet. I mean, that's the whole thing, isn't it? I love that. I don't think it's perfect, but like, that's so good. And I don't know that this would scale to something bigger or more complicated. I don't care. That's so good. I'm really into that. I'm really into the exploded view kind of world of programming. So I've been thinking about that. But I've been challenged recently. Some things got posted about a place called Dynamic Land. This is like a month ago, maybe. I don't know if y'all, there was some chatter about it. It made Hacker News and some things like that. Dynamic Land is a nonprofit. It's in San Francisco, I think, or it's in California. It's run by a guy named Brett Victor, who's kind of a famous like UI UX designer and thinker about these matters. And the challenge of what they wrote is, the thing that challenged me is that if you think about all these quotes, they sort of have this bias or this like starting assumption that the thing that we should do to make computing more accessible is we should make it easier to open programs up, so there's some more like gradual transition into more specialized knowledge, so that people could kind of ramp from like, well, I'm a little curious about how this works, and open it up a little, and then kind of go deeper in and deeper in, things like that. But that's an assumption that everyone should become a specialist to the degree that they want to be engaged in computing. And some of the things that were written on the Dynamic Land website were things like this. They said, source code in a Git repo is not open to everyone. It is open to the select class of people who know what it means to clone a Git repo, right? Because they got a lot of questions from people on Hacker News immediately that were like, oh, this is really cool. Are you going to open source it? And they have an entire document that is, the title of which is Real Talk, which is the thing they built at Dynamic Lands. Is Real Talk open source? And you can just see Brett Victor's head like in his hands as he's repeatedly saying like, no, and we're not going to make it open source, and you're missing the point. And this part stood out to me. He says, Real Talk is just one component of a culture, and downloading source code does not download values, norms, practices, and tacit knowledge. We intend the culture to spread in a manner similar to scientific practices, trades and crafts, martial arts, spoken language, and so on. In-person immersion in a community of practice, teachers teaching teachers. That'll take time, and it may appear that we're exclusive during that time, but open source software is also exclusive to those who find meaning in source code, and those people already seem well provided for. And I thought that was fantastic. So that's really stuck with me. I've been thinking about that. Yeah, I still haven't internalized what to do because the thing I want to do is code, right? I mean, I'm open to teaching, again, and I would be happy to do that if I found the right venue. But like the thing that I kind of want to do is try and write code that feels like the thing I think should exist. And this is definitely in opposition to that, so that's interesting. Okay, enough about me. So I've been working on a thing, and it's not quite inside out, and I thought that the thing would be the point of this talk, but you know, the more talk I was written, the less interested I got in the thing in some ways. I was like, I wrote some lists, it's fine. But I did come a long way, and you know, Nate's been hyping it up, so yeah, okay. I'm building a static site generator again. It's called Collards. The last one was called Coleslaw. Apparently, I met someone at some point who was like a university student of Melosia's because he taught in like North Carolina for a while or something. And they said that they would see him somewhere. They left a comment on my blog actually and said that they would like see him in this cafe eating coleslaw. And I was like, perfect, that's my first blog software's name. And so I needed something that was also a food item, also had C and L in the name to indicate common Lisp, also was, you know, felt vaguely Southern, and I was like, yeah, Collards, it works. So yeah, it's in Lisp again, of course it is. And I'm doing it this time because, well, Coleslaw had some limitations that were holding me back. But I want to share more of myself on the web than I've been doing. I've never been a person that makes cool stuff and kind of puts it out there for the world in like the sharing a personal experience way. I think that some of the sites I see on like the hand-built web these days do. And I would like to do more of that. So it's some kind of like, you know, I'm trying to share stuff today, so on a website. Ironically, HTML and CSS are things I don't know very well, never got particularly good at. And I didn't use these new software for these slides, even though it can support generating them, but it was easier for me to just like bang out the HTML and figure it out later. So if you're writing software, you should kind of know why before you get into it. I wanted it to be written in Common Lisp because I wanted it to just work. The big difference between Coleslaw is that Coleslaw couldn't do like arbitrary pages. If I wanted to just have an about page that lived in a static path, it didn't really, when I wrote it, I was trying to replace WordPress. But I wasn't trying to replace all of WordPress, right? I was trying to replace the 6% of WordPress that I was using, which was like, I need tags and I need posts, and I don't care after that. So I needed it to be able to do that, I wanted to be able to easily link across different post types, like kind of have a wiki linking system, so if I wanted to build out more of a personal knowledge store or something like that, I had a way to do that as well. And I didn't have to constantly update, you know, links if I moved things around or something like that. I wanted to be able to generate collection pages for tags, years, that sort of thing. I wanted to be tested and documented decently well. I documented coleslaw, I never wrote tests for coleslaw. And so there was a real awkward process of me stepping away from it and then people kind of wanting to dip their toes in, but not just like, take the whole thing on. Collards has CI builds and a test suite and all that sort of thing. And I lean on some libraries for the common list for curious called Try and Pax that are written by a guy named Gabor Melis or Melis GL that are really have been wonderful for tests and especially for docs. I also kind of built out a Lisp template thing so that I can scaffold new projects, and part of it is that it sets up CI through SourceHub for me, more or less, and automatic subdomain-based document generation if I add CNAME somewhere and like a bunch of stuff like that. So that's been nice. And I'm happy to talk about that more if there are questions after. This time, screw a plugin system. I do not need one. This is software for me. This is personal software. I think we all should be writing more personal software. I wish more software with user bases of 10 or fewer people existed in the world, kind of like that. This is great. I feel good about this. Coleslaw didn't really have a command line tool that it operated through. I wrote some shell script that called Lisp and said load this entire library and run main kind of thing. It's very fuck it. I don't know. I don't care. And so this time around I said, okay, maybe I should have some sort of rudimentary CLI. And then finally, the kind of in concert, I don't know that in concert with the desire to support custom pages that were arbitrary paths or things like that, Coleslaw had a routing system where you would say where posts have this URL pattern and tag pages have this URL pattern and this sort of thing, and it would decide where to put everything based on that. But every other static site generator does this kind of normal thing of just looking at the directory where you run it and looking at the layout on the file system and going, probably we'll keep this, and moving everything over, and I think that's actually good. So I did that this time around. Finally, I didn't want to bake in templates. The whole point is people should be doing their own thing aesthetically, and maybe at some point I'll add templates on an HTML level. I'm never adding styles, you figure it out. But that means that I needed to be able to load user code so that I had render methods for these different kinds of objects, so that I knew how to render them. And there's templating and things like that. And as long as I was doing that, I felt like maybe I should make it people might want to have different kinds of collections that aren't about tags or dates, or maybe they want to have different kinds of content, like slides. Slides are not baked into Collards, but in my draft repo according to it, I defined a slides class and a render method for it, and it took, 15 lines of code, and that feels right. And I don't know, I always want my code to be pretty. I don't even know what it means. I just know that if I'm going to waste my time writing something, I want to agonize over it. I really want to agonize over every little bit of it and just make it where I'm happy with this code. This is also why I'm really happy I'm not a professional engineer anymore. I don't want to ship something to get it done. I have no interest. All right. So, all of that has been done. All of that is built as the system exists today. There are tests. There are not tests for the command line command itself. So there's some parts of the build process that could be tested there. But all of the core abstractions that stuff is scaffolded on top of, there's 100 lines for the build process. All of the stuff under that is tested. There are a few things built in. There are posts which automatically participate in the collections. And there are pages which are totally custom. You define them in your own app. It's Lisp code. You do whatever you want. I don't care, and I'll render it at runtime. Docs are kind of half there. So I think these are the docs today. This is all auto-generated from MGL Pax. I think in the library I mentioned earlier. I can show you kind of in the code, in the Lisp code, how this works. But it spits out, I think, pretty nice documentation. Sort of off the rip, I can write markdown prose at various places in the code, and it gets turned into this. I haven't turned this into any sort of narrative or done the overhaul of there's not just function level information about what it does and what the arguments are, but there is in fact more detailed information about why this abstraction exists and how you should use it, and maybe start with just telling people how to use the CLI and then work down into well, do you want to know how the thing works? Have not done that part yet. One nice thing to note about the MGL Pax generated docs is that for anything that is defined, you'll see there's a function here. It's called relative path. It takes in a path name and then it does something. but all these little indicators of what kind of thing it is, function, condition, variable, all that stuff, you can click those, and it will take you directly to the source code on source hub. So it makes a nice way to actually kind of browse the system if you take the time to lay your docs out in a way that introduces the concepts in your system. And that to me starts to get it really what I want with inside out software is something where we're just super intentional about it. And we try to make it so that you could read through the README and start clicking into things and then know where to dive in. And it's just crazy to me that we don't try harder to do things like that. I'm not proud of where this is yet. I still need to do work, but it's going that direction. The collards build command is done. I want some other commands. I want a serve command that like hot reloads any files that are touched. I would love to have a help command that will actually like show you all the collards docs in plain text in the terminal, and that's actually trivial to do based on the design of the PAX library, so that one should be fun. I'd love to have a setup one that just helps you scaffold out a config file. I'd love to have a write command that just scaffolds out an empty post for you to start typing it. Those should mostly be pretty easy. Serve will be the most complicated because I should spin off a thread to deal with the notification, like the iNotify returning calls of like, hey, this file's been touched. My personal site is not yet ported to collards. This is like the one thing, I had this this process of like, okay, cool, I'll finish collards, then I'll document the hell out of it, then I'll port my site to it, then I'll and I'll give a talk. And at some point I was like, nope, the talk has to move up, has a date, deadlines. There are some blockers there. I would really like to deal with, have a dedicated blog.kingcons.io subdomain, but just for that part of the content. So I'll just figure out some rewrite rules. The bigger thing is I really like to use git annex for static assets, like big images and videos, because I'm making a memorial page to my dead dogs. I mean, let's be very clear about that. There is going to be a memorial page, and it will be long and full of content. But if I'm going to do that, the content's going to be big. Like just the images for this talk are 30 megs, and I don't want that to be in a Git repo. So I got to figure out how I want to integrate Git annex, and then write some brief suggested like appendix to the official collards docs. That's like, hey, if you want to have a bigger site that has more stuff in it, and you're thinking about how to version it or store it, then maybe look at this. Oh gosh, yeah, I should probably show whatever it does today. Okay, fine, sure, fine. These are the slides on the left, by the way. It's just a bunch of markdown in an HTML file with remark.
There we go.
All right. Okay. Where? Oh yeah. This is fine.
I wanted to see myself on the screen.
This is all totally fine.
It's sort of slapping me for the
All right. So we're in Emacs. I'm gonna run. So I guess I'll give a really brief like. Oh, I forgot that my terminal looks like shit here. I should really fix Emacs, but not right now. So this is like a layout. This is the actual the Git repo for what the site will be. It has all my old blog posts and stuff like that. The config file is in here. So I'll just show you the config file. It's incredibly stupid and simple right now. I might add some more stuff, but right now I'm trying to just keep it very basic. It's got author, domain, some ignored directories that will be skipped by the part of the code that decides what to publish, and then title. Improved means for deteriorated ends, incidentally, is a reference to an Aldous Huxley quote. Huxley said, we are no longer living in the glorious days and the glorious successes of early science, but in a rather grisly morning after, when it's become apparent that what triumphant science has done hitherto is give us improved means for achieving unimproved or in fact deteriorated ends. And I'm just like, oh, the tech industry! It's right here. And so I'm all that is just never leaving my body. So that's kind of the layout. I've got an init folder here where the various kind of helper files are for telling it how I want to render things. I don't know what the total code is. Let's see. It's 128 lines of code for all the templates right now. All the templates are really ugly right now. There's no styling at all to speak of right now, but there that is. The styling is actually in a static folder here. Anything that Coleslaw does not recognize, and I probably should have spoke about this earlier, this is what happens when you don't do a practice run of your talk. Coleslaw recognizes markdown files as posts and loads them as posts. It expects there to be a YAML front matter, and then it just says that's a post. Pages are any files not in your init folder that have a .lisp extension. It just assumes that's code that you want it to run, and it loads that stuff in and runs it. And there are some expectations about functions defined in that file. so that Collards knows how to render the page, because you're writing arbitrary code. I don't want to tell you how to do that. I just want you to say, call this function when you want HTML. That's all I want. So anyway, that's that bit. But as kind of an example of what that might look like, here, on the right we can see, there it is. On the right we can see an example of, I'll blow it up one more size, zoom. My brain can't do zoom right now, and that's not any of the stuff I need. Whatever, sure, oh God. Yeah, okay, Max, fine. Spinneret is kind of the like Lispy DSL for doing HTML generation that I've got here. Yeah, I can just do this. So I define some package up top. I import the things I need from Collards to the library. I jump into the package. And we have the important thing to define is this method called content.render. Common Lisp, if you've never seen it, has something called multiple dispatch. Dispatch is the concept in object-oriented languages of deciding what code runs when you call a method. Where does that code live? Where does it come from, right? You have an object, you call a method on it. Most languages are single dispatch. So there's a thing to the left of the dot, and whatever class that instance belongs to, you go there, and the code is either there or in one of its ancestors, and you call that method. Common Lisp does not work like this. It does not have a dot. It has what are called generic functions. They look like regular function calls, but all of the arguments can optionally be type specialized, right? But that means you could specialize on multiple arguments. So, for example, this is a render method in the content package. I'm saying that the first argument, content, should be a post. That's the type of the post package, like that type. And then the second argument should be a site from Collards site package. If that's it, then this is the method for you. If you have anything else, this is not the method for you. This code will not run. And then it just spits out some HTML. One nice thing about the Spinneret library is that you can just completely trivially intersperse like a do list in the middle that says, yeah, and I want an A tag for all of these objects that are in this thing, and it has no problem with that. So you can do some cute stuff. I'm gonna hit the con channel really quick and see if I've destroyed.
We're just talking about how pretty you are, Brett.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so that's kind of where we are now. Oh, the demo, right? So, the demo. I was supposed to do that. Okay, I'll run Collards build. Collards immediately says, "Are you sure you want to delete this build directory?" I'll say, "Yeah, it's fine. I don't know what's in there, but it's totally fine." And then it says, "Oh, the build directory doesn't exist." Fine. Okay, it existed earlier, but I blew it away before the talk. I'll just touch it. Now I've got a bug because something in the talks folder is new and I haven't handled it, and I don't really have good back traces yet when it does crash, so give me a little time. There are a lot of errors that it does recognize and handle, like if you don't have a config, or it can't find the config, like if you run the command in some arbitrary place where there is no config. If I say Collards build right here, it should go like, what are you doing? You're not in a project. Where's your .collards? I don't know what this thing is. So like it has some sensibility, but whatever that specific error is, it's not handled yet. But if I move the talks directory out, then I can do Collards build. It'll ask me if I want to blow the build away. It'll try to resolve all the links that it can. Sometimes it might fail, but that's because it thinks these things are links and there's stuff in a blog post that it doesn't need to actually turn into stuff. And then we can go in here, go into the build folder, and there's a blog, and there's some pages, and I actually just threw a to-do in the render method for recent collections. That's the one piece that's kind of not implemented here that's blocking for me. But I could go and look up my advent code reflections, and as I said, things are unstyled, but it's there. It's generating what it needs to do. It's parsing Markdown and doing the things. So basically, I should get some sort of prize for innovation. So design. I'm at 45 minutes now, so I'm not going to go super deep on this, and I'd love to leave some time for like questions. But there's a few parts of the design that I think are kind of interesting and worth looking at. So I have been in keeping with this like virtue of inside-out software and trying to make it possible for people to dive however deep they want to. There's a journal.md file that I've been keeping that I started as soon as I started the project, and I've been doing this on a few things lately. And it's just a devlog, and every time I spend more than a few hours hacking on the project, I try to take 15 minutes after I've committed whatever my work is for the day to like write down what happened or what I think or what problems I'm left grappling with, what went well, what didn't go well. Like just think about it and write that down and just put it out there. I think why not have that in the Git repo? And this probably doesn't make sense if you're on teams, right? But if you're on a single user software project and like you're the author, you're the architect, like put it somewhere. You're gonna put it on your personal blog or something, and that's cool. I mean, people see that too. But if it's like right there with the code, I don't know. That's just really appealing to me. So I've enjoyed trying to do that. It's not perfect, but I do think that there's something to it. So there's a lot of content there. There's also a design.md file that initially I was like, this is the design, and then I just started kind of treating this like a journal too, and just kind of riffing to some degree. So there's definitely some like bit rot in the design at some point when I have to figure out if I delete it or just rewrite the whole thing or what. But it's been nice to have those. What else? I have a makefile. The makefile is coming from that Lisp template project I mentioned earlier. I don't know make. I'm not a good programmer, okay, but it at least lets me use whatever good programmer means. I don't know what it means, but it at least lets me sub in different common Lisp implementations. It is an ANSI standardized language, so there are like a handful. You probably want your code to run on at least 2 or 3 of them to be sure that you haven't done something that's non-portable by accident, you know. So it makes that easy, and it gives me a lot of nice commands like make app to just build a binary really quick that I can then hopefully just upload somewhere and run. Things like make docs, which generates the site, make docs generates the README. Make site generates the HTML page you saw earlier on college.kingcons.io, and is part of the YAML build pipeline. And then tests, of course. The build YAML is here. It's not very interesting. Sometimes you have to write YAML now to make other systems do work for you. That's how the internet works, apparently. I don't want to go super deep into the def system. I can talk about that later if people want. That's kind of some common Lisp stuff. There are not a ton of dependencies. These 3 are for the markdown processing, the 3 BMD ones. You can see there's YAML, PPCRE is regular expressions, file notify is to loop me into, you know, when things are changed and need to be watched. Hunch and Toot is there to just spin up a local web server, like localhost web server. Spinneret's the HTML generation. Klingon is the command line stuff. Pax is the documentation as mentioned, and then there's a utility library, Serapium. Common Lisp is a weird language, being 30 years old. It kind of feels crufty, so having a good utility library helps with that. We kind of did this. I don't want to go super deep on the API. I'm happy to talk about any part that people are interested in or do force with the code or things like that. So yeah, there's plenty left in the to-do file. Building a serve command and docs are highest on my list, and porting the website so I can be into the step of producing content, which is what the whole point of this thing was to begin with so long ago. Yeah, as you saw, the recent post page needs to be done. That's just a to-do right now. Then I can do new exciting pages, not backwards compat stuff. But yeah, I'm kind of now at the point where I can do the thing I'm really excited about, which is trying to figure out good things to put back into the world. And then I care about the time I spend thinking about this stuff too much. Clearly, I ramble y'all's ears off to just keep it all to myself. So that should be what's next. So what can I tell you at the end of my talk? To borrow from a show I really liked and had a lot of attachment to when I saw it 6 years ago, called *Halt and Catch Fire*. If you haven't seen it, it's a dope show. Be patient with it, but watch it. Computers aren't the thing. They're the thing that gets us to the thing. And another character on the show, Donna, said the project brings us to the people. Right? This is something that characters discover after a lot of struggle trying to like have a successful tech project, and then are like, wait a minute, maybe the project's not the thing. The things I've enjoyed most in 15 years of doing this are like they're community focused, they're highly relational, they're technical work, but they're technical work that leads me to knowing others better and knowing myself better. I've never questioned the value of doing that. I've never regretted doing that. It's always felt like the right place to be. It is a hard place to find. I guess if anything, I just want us to remain ever becoming, right? And keep sharing strange and beautiful things. Let the town be town. Oh shit, there's more? Okay, this is awkward. Well, I said we should. There would always be a Meloge quote, right? So we'll do one more. He said, "To find my home." This is actually at the end of that book, Unattainable Earth. The last page is just this: "To find my home in one sentence, concise as if hammered in metal, not to enchant anybody, not to earn a lasting name in posterity, an unnamed need for order, for rhythm, and for form, which three words are opposed to chaos and nothingness." That's it. That's all I got. We survived!
So unfortunately, we don't have time for questions. So please put them in chat. You're in there, right?
Yeah.
You're there right now. So yeah, chat up kingcons with questions, or just chat with them later. But we have a speaker who's gonna run right in, which is M455, aka Milk, aka Mass, aka Jesse. I'm gonna refresh my tea, but yeah, feel free to. Oh, did I show you how to get? Did you have stuff to present? Or
I am just gonna talk.
Just going? All right, cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna go read my tea. And I'll come back and listen to your talk.
After this one, What's up? Shout out to having like a down to walking movie club. That rules actually.
It's really. I don't. It feels weird to me that I haven't seen it more. But I don't know if I saw someone do it and I copied it or I can't. I don't. Yeah, I've been very happy with it.
Yeah, so I'm just going to be reading from a text file that I just free wrote. There's no order to this. I totally fucked up the chronological order of what things happened. And yeah, so bear with me. I'm M455. My pronouns are he, him, they, them. I don't have any preference over the other. I have suspended